Okay, good evening. We're going to go ahead and call to order. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Troopman,
Here.
Vice Mayor Johnson Sardella,
She is on her way.
Samaria. Okay, thank you.
Here.
Commissioner Tudor,
Here.
Commissioner Wise,
Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any addition or withdrawals to deletions to the agenda? I would like to add one, if I may. I'd like to, if I may, if there's no objection, before 5A, I'd like to introduce Anastasia Protopapadakis, if I'm saying that correct.
That's correct.
Okay, who's representing us for our attorney. If there's no objection, I'd like to take a moment to do that.
No problem.
Okay. So we'll put that in the beginning for presentations.
Mayor, can you speak in your mic, please?
Me too. No problem. Okay, here we go. Can everybody hear me now?
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. So I'd like to introduce to everyone Anastasia Protopapadakis, I'd like to go ahead and have her introduce herself a little bit and tell a little bit background about it.
Sure. My name is Anastasia Protopapadakis. I'm a shareholder with the law firm of Gray Robinson. I've been with Gray Robinson since 2011. I practice civil litigation and concentrate in municipal defense. Prior to joining Gray Robinson, I practiced law in a boutique municipal defense firm, so I defended only municipalities for all things that municipalities had issues with on the legal side. Did that for about 7 years, so very familiar with the municipal world.
Thank you so much, and welcome. Okay, so Arbor Day proclamation. Let me just go ahead and do that real quick. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for planting of trees, and whereas the holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed through the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce erosion of our precious topsoil and by wind and water, lowering our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuels for our fire, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in the village increase property values, enhance the economic viability of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore, the Honorable Mayor and the Village of Biscayne Park do hereby proclaim April 26, 2019 as Arbor Day in the Village of Biscayne Park and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands and to plant and care for trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of the future generations. Next, I've been asked on behalf of the Florida League of Cities to actually present Commissioner Wise with a certificate of completion for a course that she has taken up in North Florida. So I'll read that letter. I've been asked to read it out loud. Honorable Commissioner Wise, on behalf of John Scott Daly, Florida Institute of Government and the Florida League of Cities, I'm pleased to award this certificate to you for completion of the 18-hour hours of instruction at the Institute of the Elected Municipal Offices in Jacksonville, Florida on January 25th through 27th of this year. It is our sincere hope that you find the program challenging and worthwhile. Now that you've taken the basic IEMO, we encourage you to attend the Advanced Institute offering annually. We also encourage you to take advantage of other training opportunities to the FLC University and the Institute of Government. You can find the dates and locations at the given website, which you'll have the letter for. We strongly believe that your attendance at the Institute is indicative of your continuous commitment to improving the quality of municipal government in Florida. If we may be of assistance in the future, please do not hesitate to call on us. We hope to see you at our future events. And with that, I'm not going to make her get up and go to the podium. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you want to tell anybody about it?
It was a wonderful program. It was interesting. There's a lot to tell. I actually thought if anyone's interested, I can share the binder, the curriculum, that I received for the weekend and leave it with the clerk in the Village Hall for anyone to see if anyone else is interested in attending or curious about what it is that was shared. But it was a really valuable experience, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, 5C, presentation from Finance. Village Manager and Mr. Winklejohn.
And we have Paul Winklejohn from GMS to bring us up to speed on the finances and also go through some key dates that we have coming up.
Yes, actually, the quarterly reports that I will be giving the board, which I did two meetings ago, are going to take place in the May meeting. We'll have the April financials, March and April financials for that, which ends that quarter. Nothing unusual has been going that I want to report today, so I thought I would focus on the schedule in today's meeting, which has been circulated for you, and we could probably go to 2 pages for those of you who don't want to keep changing your glasses. I oddly have to take mine off to read this. I'm not sure why, but this is something we promised that we would build at this time of year for you, so you can anticipate when the budget actions would start to take place. One of them starts to take place right now, which is kicking off the solid waste assessment process. As soon as we get the indexed costs back from our contractor, I'll generate a draft budget that'll be before you as the schedule suggests. Really the next month is an internal process. Your manager will initiate direction to each of the managers of each departments, which you have a new one, which is ready to go, I'm sure. And we'll build a lot more detail than last year in that process that will have a lot of questions answered that we couldn't answer as easily last year, and took a lot of learning on all of our parts. With 2 new members of the commission, I thought having the calendar today would show you how things will kick off. It's right now the county meeting that sets the non-ad valorem schedule, which doesn't change a whole lot, but what that does is it starts the clock for when the school board and the county adopt their budgets. And as you may know, we can't conflict with their dates. So that takes things that happen in a 4-week window and it gives you 2-week options or off-cycle type meetings and things like that. So budget does not fit our normal rhythm because of those requirements. Just wanted to let you know that that we're working on this, and we're excited about having a nice tight schedule this year and getting to things early and accurately.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and open the floor to public comments. With that, if the village attorney would be so kind as to read the decorum rules. It's the 3rd paragraph on the beginning of the agenda.
Okay. All comments must be addressed to the commission as a body and not to individuals. Any person making impertinent or slanderous remarks or who becomes boisterous while addressing the commission shall be barred from further audience before the commission by the presiding officer unless permission to continue or again address the commission is granted by the majority vote of the commission members present. No clapping, applauding, heckling, or verbal outbursts in support or in opposition to a speaker or his or her remarks shall be permitted. No signs or placards shall be allowed in the commission chambers. Please mute or turn off your cell phone or pager at the start of the meeting. Failure to do so may result in being barred from the meeting. Persons exiting the chambers shall do so quietly.
Thank you. Open the floor for public comments. And please remember there's 3 minutes. And there's a timer on top for those of you.
Bob Anderson, 11th Place, 119th Street. I noticed one of the agenda items was missing. Was a discussion on what was sent out to all the homeowners, a survey. And I don't recall ever seeing that on an agenda item, ever. And I was just curious who authorized that being sent out and expenditures, who authorized the questions that are on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other for public comments?
My name is Marie Smith. I live at 12015 Griffin Boulevard. I'm also a member of the foundation, and as you know, for almost for 5 years, a resident of the village for 50. On Saturday, we had an event, which was a very nice event, and with the exception of Commissioner Dan Samario, there was no representation from the commission at that point.
You might have left. Can I make a comment? I know.
Not during the comments. Let her finish. please.
Okay.
Thank you.
What I wanted to say is it would be nice to see 1 or 2 commissioners at our fundraising events. And of course, you were informed of this a month ago through the egret and all the blasting that was going on. And then when it came down to the details, there was no commissioners except Dan. So I want to thank you, Dan, for stepping in and welcoming everybody. And with that, I would hope things will improve in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I will go ahead.
Ms. Smith, to be fair, Ms. Smith, usually I don't usually make a comment, but I have to be fair. You might not have seen it. Commissioner Betsy was there, and Commissioner Tudor was there. So I don't want to take, full credit of being the only one there.
And
Thank you.
Ms. Smith, just so you're aware, I've never missed one of your wonderful events, and the dancers, unfortunately, I was out of town, so I wasn't able to attend, and I did let the manager know. Okay? Thank you.
Good evening, Rox Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. I was pleasantly surprised to see that survey come in the mail. I'm not sure, how we got to that point of actually sending it out, but it's a good start. And I'm looking forward to the session later this month. It was spoken of, I don't know, maybe in December, one of your first meetings when Commissioner Weiss brought up this branding issue. And then it kind of went dormant, so I'm glad to see it come back. Also, I want to congratulate Commissioner Weiss on her emo. I went through that process. I went through the second as well. I can recommend that you go to that one because the topics are much more in depth and you'll get a lot out of it. On the issue of FEMA, back in 2009, we were faced with a demand for deobligation, and it was like one of the worst times in village finance to have that happen. They were asking for, I believe it was $125,000 back. We had a very public process and a very public discussion about the demands, what the village was doing, who they hired to take care of it, and the citizens, the commission of course, but also the citizens were informed every step of the way. So you really should take a look at how you're handling this, because the more information you share with the public, the more trust and faith you'll be building in them. So the process should be public and open. Financials. The last financial posted is for January 31st. And Mr. Winklejohn just spoke about a schedule for the budget preparation, which wasn't part of the agenda, so I was a little at a loss with what you were saying. Those things really should be posted for people to see, attached to the agenda when possible, and certainly update the finance page to have those things. Because, as I say, faith and trust in government is one of your primary obligations to help build that. And the way that the village is currently addressing public records requests is very anti-faith in government. The almost recalcitrant and uncooperative attitude, the arbitrary fees that are being charged, even the total lack of a response to public records requests, I strongly recommend that you reconsider that policy and have a more open government as Florida law requires. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Markin. I live at 730 Northeast 120th Street. And the reason why I signed up to speak today is I've been living in Biscayne Park for almost 6.5 years. My husband and I have made numerous, almost countless complaints regarding the code violations that are occurring in our street. We have a neighbor who feeds anywhere between 10 to 25 cats, and those cats continuously, every day, defecate on my property. I have pictures, they sleep underneath our cars or on top of our cars. The cats vomit on my barbecue, on my lawn chair. I have a 5.5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I would like to hold an Easter egg hunt at my house, but I am afraid I will have to spend 2 days searching for defecations from the feral cats before I can invite children over to search for eggs. And we have emailed, we have called. My husband's a general contractor, so he's done work here, so he stops all the time, and everyone is very friendly, everyone's very polite, but everyone keeps saying that there's nothing that they can do about it. And I'm an attorney, and I helped out a client, and I was here at your Code Compliance Board once, and I saw how the Code Compliance Board really cares about the beautification of Biscayne Park and making sure that everyone's houses are painted and that the fences are up to code. And it's very, very disheartening as a citizen, and having lived here, and I love my neighborhood, and I love the fact that I'm raising my kids here, but it's very, very disheartening to sit through one of those meetings and hear how people are getting fined $25 a day, $5 a day, because they don't have the money to paint their house, and know that my neighbor continuously feeds feral cats and causes destruction to my property, and nothing can be done about it. So I will hope that my 2 cents will sink into some of you, and hopefully the issue can be resolved.
Thank you.
Go ahead. After you were saying, go ahead.
Chuck Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. I'm going to read, since you read the decorum rules, I'm going to read Truth in Government. Truth in Government. No village official or employee shall knowingly furnish false information on any public matter, nor knowingly omit significant facts when giving requested information to members of the public. That's from our Citizens' Bill of Rights. At the last meeting, we were informed that FEMA denied a portion of our claim. We weren't told the amount, and we also weren't told. We were also told that it was in the normal course of FEMA denying a claim. Subsequent to the meeting, I got a hold of the letters, and I have concerns. According to the letters from FEMA dated February 13th and 22nd of 2019, there appear to be 2 primary reasons why we've been denied reimbursement. One reason is the non-competitive PC Peabody contract for monitoring debris removal, signed by Mayor Trutman on September 12th without being competitively bid or calling for an emergency meeting of the Commission. The Mayor claimed she had the authority to sign this without calling a meeting in the Commission. In fact, she did not. She claimed she declared a state of emergency. It's irrelevant. The state of emergency does not give the Mayor additional powers, and neither did the Resolution 2012-43 that I believe she used as a claim for that purpose, for those reasons. The other reason is the lack of a cost analysis by the village and improper documentation of the debris removal companies. And we have been reassured for months now that the company that is assisting us with FEMA reimbursement has been progressing along, and I haven't heard anything mentioned about any issues. As a reminder of the obligations of the manager, he is to inform the village of financial concerns. This appears to fall under one of the obligation of him in the charter. I think we're entitled to an explanation of what's been going on and how this will be resolved. More importantly, we only have 60 days from the receipt of the letters to appeal these denials by FEMA, and we have to submit all of the required documentation within those 60 days, which is within the next few weeks. So I think we're entitled to that explanation. The other thing I would like to mention is when we do come up here and make comments, we would like answers, and we don't get them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, Luis Carranza. I'm 712 Northeast 120th Street. I'm also part of the neighborhood where Sarah Markin is part of, and I also am struggling to be happy and comfortable with the fact that this neighbor of ours is feeding and giving home to these feral cats. I have a 5-year-old, I have a newborn as well, I have 2 dogs. It's very difficult to walk out without the dogs going crazy. It's very difficult to go out and play at the park with them without having to run into some excrement and whatnot. Very difficult also to go outside in the pool and find our plants being eaten and poop everywhere and whatnot. And really, it's what's more disheartening for myself, and I'll echo and double down as what Sarah was saying, not only that it's a code compliance error, but that we've submitted emails, come in person, asked for someone to drive. I've been asked to take pictures. I don't feel comfortable taking pictures of my neighbor or their property or their whereabouts, yet I've also done them and printed them out and brought them as well. And still no resolution. Back in the day, rumors at least, was that this person was able to keep the cats there because the neighbors coalesced and said, oh, these cats are mine, then these cats are mine, and these cats are mine. That's no longer the reality. We're all new neighbors, and it's 2 households plus another household where the owners were not able to come in today that are vehemently against this. So we would really love something to be done, or at least an alternative or suggestion, so that we can deal with this properly and fast, or dispose of these cats in a humane way, either to the Humane Society where they can come and pick them up, or something. I've also caught, since I have some more time, caught her feeding the cats at 12 midnight, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. just to get away from us being able to look at it. And I happen to come in from work. I fly in pretty late a lot of times. So I just wish this is something that could be brought up. One other thing that I think will interest everybody, and this is not just a corner issue, this is a bird sanctuary from when I moved in, and I remember it's great. I've seen 2 bluebirds dead without a head in the garden or in the quad. That's also disheartening to see. So if we could do something about that, or if I could be guided into the right place as I've knocked many doors, that would be very, very appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fred Jonas, 918 119th Street. Betsy, I too want to compliment you on your having extended yourself to go to the EMO training, and I agree with Roxy, you should go to the second one as well. I thought they were wonderful, and I thought that all commissioners should be required to go to them. Unfortunately, they don't all do it. I don't know how many of your colleagues have gone. I'm not sure actually if any of them have, but if they haven't, it's a question they might ask themselves about why, without any knowledge of government or EMO, they decided that they probably didn't need it. The second thing is I wanted to just address, because I understand that you have now used village money to buy yourselves additional mobile phones. We talked about this a little bit last time, but you didn't want too much feedback at the time. And I remember that part of your theory, as you proposed it, was that this would somehow help transparency. And I want to just point out to you what may be very obvious, and that is that if somebody makes a request for records, and assuming that you can be bothered to try to satisfy the request at all, which mostly it appears you don't do, but if you do it, there's no reason that anybody should assume that all village business will be transacted only on the village phone. People do make mistakes, or they cheat, or somebody may call you on your personal phone and not the village phone. And according to your proposal, it's not exactly clear what you think should be done about that or how it should be monitored. It seems that you want us simply to trust you, and that this should be some sort of an honor system. If we trusted you, we wouldn't be making record requests. And if you stonewall them, as you have done, then you only compromise the whole process. I also wanted to mention, since you have constructed a very peculiar little decorum ordinance, it's a very distinctly one-way street, and you use it only to suppress your neighbors. If you took the concept seriously, and if you were honest about it, then none of you, like I'd think of Betsy, for example, in the last meeting, would take the opportunity to unload on one of your neighbors who's sitting in the audience with the knowledge and the reassurance that your neighbor could not respond because you've already said you don't want to have to hear about it. So I hope you'll reconsider the approach that you take to your neighbors. It's frankly very nasty, and it's disrespectful.
Further public comments?
MacDonald Kennedy, 11705 Northeast 11th Place. Folks, don't even get me started on the cats. I'll show you pictures of the worms I've had twice from cats. Be careful picking up the poop. Worms, twice living in my flesh. It took me 6 weeks to get rid of them. Don't ever let your kids get worms from those cats. Parks and Parkways has a new chair. Congratulations, Barbara Kuehl. It's a very important board to this village, so good luck, Barbara. Thanks to Public Works for 2 new traffic calming devices on 11th Place. They weren't part of the safety board proposal that I was aware of, so I'm not sure who to thank personally, but they're there and I appreciate it. The vision flyer. I am thrilled to see this come to fruition about a year and a half after a group of residents proposed the idea in what Tracy called the best presentation she ever saw at a commission meeting, and I remember those words. We were very proud to hear that from the mayor. However, I'm a bit confused about how a public meeting called a communications workshop on the calendar morphed into a workshop to, quote, craft a new mission and vision for Biscayne Park and, quote, define a set of core values. But thanks to whomever made that happen. I do appreciate it. Shouldn't this have been agreed upon, the flyer, the questions, by the entire commission for an open-ended conversation, which is what this workshop should be? Those questions seem a bit leading to me, but I do look forward to participating. At the last meeting, you discussed empty boards and decided to email out a call for applicants. That email never went out, even though emails went out to fill other boards. I emailed Christian and Roseanne to inquire why that didn't happen, and I got no response. Now I want to address the prepared comments by Betsy at the last meeting, which were undignified and factually incorrect. Questioning one's government is not adversarial. Moreover, it embarrassed Biscayne Park, and it lives on YouTube forever for the world to see how this village eats its own young. How ironic that after the wheels came off Tracy's meeting, Roxana Ross came to the podium to draw attention to a legal error that caused Christian to stop the proceedings. Our new attorney didn't catch Christian's mistake. Christian didn't catch his own mistake. Roseanne didn't catch Christian's mistake. The mayor didn't catch Christian's mistake. And neither did any of our 4 elected commissioners, 2 of whom were members of the Florida Bar. A resident and a former commissioner who had just been treated like a heretic caught the mistake and saved this village money and time and possible legal issues. I hope to hear a public thanks to Roxana Ross tonight, but I'm not holding my breath. I would like to hear an update on Betsy's request to the village attorney regarding an harassment investigation into village residents who have legally requested public records. I would like to know how much time and money has been spent thus far and the status of that investigation and charges that might be filed against village residents. To those of us in the cheap seats here, Betsy's comments sounded like intimidation tactics and possible abuse of power, so perhaps the new village attorney could look into that matter at the same time. Anyone on the dais who doesn't question or challenge that kind of behavior from a commissioner is complicit in that behavior. Biscayne Park is better than that, and we expect that from you.
Thank you. Any further public comments?
Janie Anderson, 11th Place, 119th Street. Very much ditto what Max said. You know, I was so looking forward to the whole visioning, branding process because it was something, I was also part of that group, that was very positive and very forward-thinking. But I'm having a really hard time reconciling how we're going to brand ourselves as an organization when we basically treat our shareholders, that would be us residents, like trash, where we can count on public flogging from Commissioner Wise and sometimes the mayor at every monthly meeting, and then that got expanded last month of a public flogging of our attorney, the employee of this organization. If we're going to brand this organization, if we're going to have core values, public flogging of employees shouldn't be one of them. And as far as the variance part goes, it actually did cost us money definitively because it was advertised for the 5th, which was the original agreed upon March meeting date. Dates are set by resolution. When all of a sudden, the 3 women on the commission didn't want to have a meeting that night for reasons they've never shared with us, got moved to the 19th, wasn't re-advertised. Well, now when it gets re-advertised, that's on our nickel. So when we're being accused of wasting time and money and harassing you guys, think about your part in all of this, and there needs to be a lot more introspection coming from this commission.
Thank you. Any further public comments? None having, public comments are closed. We have information updates.
We do. Rebecca Rodriguez is going to give us an update on FEMA and where we are with that.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. For anyone who wasn't at the last meeting, my name is Rebecca Rodriguez, and I am an attorney at Gray Robinson. I'm a senior associate. I'm sorry. Is this better?
Yeah,
Okay.
microphone's pretty challenged. You got to get pretty close.
So for those of you who may not know, the village incurred emergency debris removal expenses after Hurricane Irma in 2017, and it was a substantial amount because Irma was a serious storm. Several claims are submitted to FEMA through H2O as the hired consultant, and FEMA, for the most part, denied all of the claims. We are currently within the appellate period. I heard a gentleman say that the deadline is 60 days. That is true. Within the next 30 days, all appeals are due. It's my understanding that H2O considers their contract with the village fulfilled. And in light of that, our firm is handling the appeals. We have been working on that since the last meeting. To provide you with an update on the basis of the denials, they really, and I heard a gentleman say it's really two issues. He's correct. It really is two issues. The first is regarding the Grubbs contract. The Grubbs contract was initially through Hernando County, and the village piggybacked on that contract. And FEMA determined, and that's in the decision letter, that the piggybacking is fine, provided that the underlying procurement that Hernando County went through was the way FEMA likes it done, openly solicited, multiple bids, a review process. We worked with Hernando County to get a lot of supporting documentation on that. I'm happy to report that it was an open process. It was advertised. Hernando County actually received 8 bids, and the Grubbs contract was the lowest. These are all factors that support that this was an open process. There were interviews. We even have the score sheets from the Hernando County Commission as to how the 8 bids were ranked. So we will be providing that to FEMA as to that contract to explain and justify why the Grubbs contract, which we permissibly piggybacked on, does in fact comply with FEMA. And for those of you who don't know the date that we piggybacked it was piggybacked well before Hurricane Irma landed. So that particular contract is not a sole sourcing issue. The other contract is the BCP body contract. That contract was entered into by the village on an emergency basis immediately following Irma. I don't know if any of you remember, but Irma took up the size of the whole state. So it was very slim pickings finding a emergency debris removal services that weren't already contracted by other municipalities or counties. So FEMA's basis for denial as to the funds that went to BCP body are, we don't have enough information to determine if what happened with your village justifies the sole sourcing exception. Obviously, FEMA's very essence is emergencies. So there is a provision in the CFR that allows for sole sourcing, and what sole sourcing means is it's not open solicitation, there was not a bid process because there wasn't time. So our argument to FEMA in our appeal will be walking through the factors of that regulation and explaining why we didn't have time. All the vendors we tried to contact said they couldn't come. And those are all facts that we are going to provide. Again, the appellate deadline is within the next 30 days, so we are not sitting on this. We've been working on it. We already have what we need from Hernando County. We're compiling what we need as to BCP body, and we will be timely appealing every single denial to get every single dime that we can for the village. I want to take a step back for a second and have a general discussion, just so you all are aware. We represent many municipalities across the state of Florida. We're a very Florida firm, and the village was not the only municipality that was denied Irma claims. It seems to be a trend. So we had a call with our managing shareholder, who it was actually announced today will be taking over the firm at the end of our fiscal year as the director of the entire firm. His name is Dean Cannon. He is the former Speaker of the Florida House. He has a lot of connections in Tallahassee, and he runs our lobbying practice up there. Myself, along with other municipal attorneys around the state with our firm, have been communicating with Dean Cannon. We think this is a macro level problem across the state, and we are working with Jared Moskowitz, who is the head of DEM for Florida, which is the Department of Emergency Management. to get him to liaise with FEMA, with some of the higher up contacts, because this is not just a village problem, this is a Florida problem. Irma decimated Florida. And it seems that FEMA has acted as an insurance carrier, sometimes does, and just rejects everything and see who bothers to appeal. So we are working on that. Beyond the appeals, we are timely filing them. We are working on compiling the documentation. They are all being drafted. We are appealing every dime that was denied. But just so you all are aware, we are also working behind the scenes as to all municipalities, because many of our clients are in a similar boat and it's not right. So hopefully this update satisfies some of the inquiries. I know some people wanted to know what's going on. We're not sitting on it, and they're being timely appealed.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the village manager?
No, Rebecca summed it up very well. I mean, this process is ongoing. We are doing everything we can to make sure that we get back every penny we can. And we're grateful for Rebecca and her work on this, on the appeal. And we're grateful to have her.
Commissioner Smirra.
A couple questions I have. Sure. How long is this appeal process going to take? And what is our chances of getting the money back? Because my biggest concern that I'm going to have is we have a hurricane season coming up June 1st.
I understand.
And I don't know if we have enough. I mean, I haven't seen what's in our reserve. I'm concerned that we're not going to have enough to cover us for the next hurricane.
Well, we can't give expectations of results, right? But I can tell you the documentation that we have received from Hernando County as to the Grubbs contract, because we're really talking about two denials. We're talking about a denial as to the Grubbs contract and a denial as to the BCP body contract. The Grubbs contract, which was piggybacked through the Hernando County agreement, we have obtained a lot of documentation which supports that Hernando County checked every box that FEMA would require for FEMA to classify the procurement of that vendor as appropriate open solicitation. I mean, down to the commission's score sheets when they were reviewing the 8 applicants, there were 8, and Grubbs was the lowest of the 8 by a lot in terms of bid. I mean, like by millions of dollars. So I think we have strong footing in our appeal as to the Grubbs contract, because we are presenting a lot of information, a lot of documentation, verifiable documentation, down to the meeting minutes when Hernando County voted to approve the Grubbs contract at its inception, well before the village piggybacked on it. The BCP body contract is a little more complicated because we don't know at this point, seeing how FEMA's treated the Florida municipalities and counties to date regarding Irma, because it was so disastrous. We don't know how FEMA is going to treat weaving the factors of the sole sourcing exception. We don't know. We are hopeful that if you go through all the factors and you say, yeah, there was an emergency, it was a Cat 5, and it was the size of the state of Florida, there was nobody to do it, we didn't have time to notice and quorum and do all of those things to vote on this in due course. We have a provision in our charter that allows for emergency votes in certain situations. This was that, and we needed to clear our roads. We are providing the documentation to support that. FEMA may still say no. I mean, we talked about that a little bit at the last meeting. FEMA could still say, yeah, that's great. You should have had that agreement in place beforehand. We don't know how they're going to be towards the state. This is not a village issue, this is a state issue. The village is not the only municipality in Florida who had to go through emergency procedures to secure emergency vendors that they otherwise never would have needed. And it's disappointing because we're one of the biggest states in the country, and FEMA's basically denied cities across the state. But hopefully, with the work of Jared Moskowitz in Tallahassee, who runs DEM for Florida, we will be pushing the federal government to soften its position, because the state's had a lot of money from Irma, and it's not just the village. So my hope is that if you walk through the factors, FEMA will award it. That's the BCP body contract. That one's a little more complicated.
Okay. And regarding the BCP body contract too, we followed the direction of the village attorney on the sole sourcing on that every step of the way. So it wasn't some random thing that we just did.
Right.
We went through, calling different companies and trying to find someone. I think it started a few days before.
Can you make sure you get all that documentation? Because when it was presented for me to sign, there was no option. There was You sign this or you won't get reimbursed.
Well, that's
That's
it.
really what it was. There was no option. So I just want to make it clear to everybody, because the representation here has been deliberately misleading. I think my other concern with this is to make sure that you have all the documentation, because my understanding is part of the problem was that our PGM basically up and left in a 24-hour period, didn't ask for request for information from the village. So if they don't
Excuse me, Mayor, just for clarity, the PGM is actually a FEMA employee. He's
Sorry.
our program manager and our contact at FEMA.
Right. And so when that person from FEMA didn't ask for information from us about Hendry County, didn't ask for information about Peabody, there was no request for information. Normally the process is if they had a question, they would come back and ask for information. But if they don't ask for it, we can't give them for what they don't ask for. And so that was another part of my understanding of the issue from H2O.
Yes, and another aspect to that was information that we did provide the PGM was not relayed up the chain at FEMA.
So we
some
gave
of
it
the
to them
information
and didn't
he
get it.
had.
And if I may piggyback, because
then Commissioner Smear afterwards.
in my review of the correspondence with FEMA on the initial claims, there was a lot of supplemental requests for documentation and additional items. And what I think happened, I don't speak for FEMA, but it looks like there was a disconnect in some of the supplemental documentation. Not that it wasn't presented to FEMA, but that it didn't make it to the ultimate decision maker. So we are going to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, into the appeal so they have everything they could possibly need, so we don't run the risk of a supplemental request leading to a breakdown in communication or documents being lost. No, everything's going to be indexed. We're going to do it with an appendix, Bates numbered. Once we submit it, they have everything we have. And if we're denied, it's not because we didn't give them something we could have. That won't be the basis for the denial. Hopefully it doesn't get denied, but if it were, it wouldn't be for that.
Thank you. Commissioner Smear.
I don't like thinking negatives, but if you can put together, I'd like to know what happens if FEMA turns us down. Is our reserves, are we going to have enough money in our reserves to do another storm that happens to hit?
Well, I mean, the reality there is we've got, I think, about 400,000 in our reserves right now. Paul, that's correct?
How much did it cost
And
us
so,
in the last storm?
The last storm cost $1 million, but I mean, it just depends on the storm. You're asking me to speculate. We don't know what the next storm will be. It may be, a $2 million, a $5 million storm. It just depends.
We've always had carried historically, if we look at our reserves, we were always carrying about $400,000 for many, many years, especially after 2008. It even went down, and then it went back up to 600, and then it went back up. We had a quite nice nest egg for a while at about 1.2 million. So we're actually the highest ever the village had recently. But with that came the storm, and thus the expenditure.
Part of what we did last year in changing banks too is work with FBC we've got the opportunity for $1 million line of credit for emergencies like this if need be. It's not something we ever want to have to take on or use, but it's also a little backup there should we need it. I mean, the reality is that, the day after the storm, what I want is roads cleared and electricity restored and make sure people are safe, all of it as quickly as possible. And so...
Could you bring some of that information to the next commission meeting? I'd like to see.
Which information?
Well, whatever information you're talking about, loan, credit line, credit that. I'm really concerned that we're not going to have enough money for the next storm that's going to come. And I want to...
Commissioner Smear, may I suggest that you ask Mr. Paul Winklejohn some of these questions? Because he might be able to answer some of them now for you.
No, well, we have talked with Rafael Barrero at FCB, and that was part of our whole move over. We've not applied for the line of credit yet, but we can certainly do that if need be. We just haven't needed it, and I don't see the need to apply for it. It's really there for an emergency.
I'm not saying to apply for it. I'm saying give information to the commissioner on exactly.
Yeah, Commissioner, you may remember at the last meeting when this denial came up, I gave a little bit of a report very similar to your attorneys. Same exact thing with my other clients, and at the end of my report, I mentioned that the business arrangement for the refinancing included recognition of needs for a line of credit, and my staff and I mentioned that I would make inquiries. They haven't given us anything, but if you start inquiring about a line of credit, it can hurt you in the other side. But it is a business arrangement with them. They've assured us that should we apply for it, we've already met their qualifications, and it's something we believe is already in place. But applying for it, you go through creditworthiness, and you don't want to do that until it's time.
I'm not saying apply for it.
All right, I'm correcting
I'm saying
that.
have it down on paper to show that this is exactly what's going to happen if we don't have it. We can get a line of credit. I don't see anything in front of me that explains that, and that's what I want to see. I want to see in front of me, okay, if we don't get the FEMA thing, this is the next steps we can do.
I can
Well, I
print
think
you
you're
out the
blur- you're
emails that
blurring-
say that.
Yeah, you're blurring a couple issues there, sir. I'd like to clarify. You have reasonable amount of reserves for the typical bad storm, an extremely, hot Cat 5 storm. Nobody financially prepares for that. You react to it as best you can, and that's just practicality and reality. Financially speaking, we are in position to obtain a letter of credit should that be necessary.
Thank you.
I'm happy to provide you what I have, but there isn't going to be more than that.
Thank you, sir. Are there any more questions for Mr. Winklejohn or Ms. Rodriguez? Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Any other information updates?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other information updates?
No.
I just want to also thank you for all the hard work you're doing and as fast as you've been putting it together, so thank you. We have a consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept the consent, the balance of the consent? Or is there anything removed from the consent?
Is the resolutions in the consent? No, right?
No.
Okay. I make a motion to accept it.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We're going to move on to number 10, Resolution 10A, Village Attorney. It's Resolution 2019-07, which is item number 10A. Do you want to read it?
Sure. Resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, ratifying the selection and appointment of board members to the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board, providing for an effective date.
Thank you. I'll open the floor for discussion. I believe there were two applicants. There was one clarifying point for one of the applicants who's here now. I did want you to address that. If you left the board or resigned, you can't return for over a year, but that doesn't preclude that individual from applying to a different board. So that person is Mr. Susi, who applied to both boards, both Planning and Zoning and Code, which would make him be able to apply to the Code Board, but not to the Planning and Zoning Board. Could you read the section in that, just so he's aware? Is it okay? Okay. Thank you. Just make sure we were clear. Thank you very much. All right. So for the first resolution is for Planning and Zoning. I believe there's only one applicant, which would be. Hold on, would be Kareem. And we have, hold on.
It is just one applicant, Kareem
Yeah, so it's
Al-Hagri.
Kareem, I'm pronouncing his last name wrong, so if you would-
Al-Hagri, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So that's just a vote of, we have to do that in writing? Yes?
He
So-
was originally the alternate, right?
Yes, he was originally the alternate, that is correct, sir. I think I handed you that. You did? No, I don't know. I can't see it. I can write it on a piece of paper. Must have got it. Yes, I did. I think I gave it to her when I gave you the paper before. Maybe. Oh, that's possible. Good. Thank you. Okay, if you could read the second resolution while she's going.
Resolution 2019-07, Code Compliance Board Member Selection. Resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, ratifying the selection and appointment of board members to the Code Compliance Board, providing for an effective date.
For this item, I believe there are 2 applicants, and there's also an opening for a alternate as well, 2 openings for alternates. So for this one, do you want to go ahead and vote for, I'm just asking the commission how you'd like to handle this. Do you want to just vote for the board member first?
I want to vote for the first one. The one that's
And
actually
then
on the
board
The other
first?
one will be the
Okay,
alternate.
that's fine. Any objection?
And I like to have it where it's a live vote, not written.
It's a written vote, and then that can be read afterwards. It will be read afterwards, it's not a problem.
Are both names on the ballot?
Yes.
Then please just write 1 by the person you want to be a permanent member and 2 by the person you'd like to be an alternate member, and that way we can just move this ahead.
Any objection? Nope.
Oh, here it comes.
While she's working on the second one, do you want to read the results of the first one?
Okay, the votes are in for Planning and Zoning Board with a total of 5 votes. Kareem is on the board.
Congratulations, Kareem. That's for planning and zoning.
On the Code Board, we have Gary Kuehl as the permanent member and Jared Susi as the alternate.
Congratulations, both. Do you want to read the number of votes? Can you read the number of votes, if you would, please? 5 votes on each. Thank you. Okay, we're going to head and move to
What was the vote?
5 for Gary and as the permanent, and 5 for Jared as the alternate. Okay? And the other one was 5-0 as well for Kareem.
Thank you.
Okay, new business, 12A. Commissioner Smear, that's your item?
Okay, I'm going to read what the charter says, section 4.01, commission meeting procedure. Meetings, the commission shall hold at least 11 regular monthly meetings in each calendar year. At such times and places as the commission may prescribe by rule. Special meetings may be held on call of the mayor or upon the call of 4 members of the commission. and upon no less than 24 hours notice to each member and the public, or such short a time as the majority of the commission shall deem necessary in case of an emergency affecting life, health, property, and public peace. B, Section B, Rules and Journal. The commission shall determine its own rules of procedure and order of business and shall keep minutes upon the public inspection. C, Quorum and voting. 1, all 3 members of the commission shall constitute a quorum, but small number may recess, adjourn, or meeting from time to time, and may compel the attendance of the absent members in a matter and subject to the penalties prescribed by the rules of the commission prior to voting on matters of great importance. 2, ordinance shall be voted upon roll call. What I'm recommending is that the charter is not specific enough. My recommendation is that the scheduled date and time the meeting be held. The village clerk calls the roll. If there is quorum, the meeting will proceed. If there's no quorum, the meeting cannot proceed. If it is canceled or postponed, the village manager is to contact each commissioner separately to set up a new date or wait until the next scheduled meeting.
Thank you. Open for public comments. Any comments from the commissioners? Vice Mayor?
I mean, I agree that there's some vagueness. I'm just wondering if this is the best way to handle it. It also brings up some of the public comments because I'd like to address one comment made by Ms. Anderson that she made a statement and made it factual that the 3 females postponed the March meeting. All I can do is speak for myself is that I was reached out to that the meeting needed to be moved, and I was told the new date. I didn't request any postponement. I don't think I've ever requested it. So I can agree that maybe there needs to be something else here, but I don't know if that captures every instance that a meeting might need to be moved for whatever reason. But I just wanted to clarify because I don't want someone attributing something to me that did not happen.
My issue is specifically if there's not going to be a quorum that's able to be held, do you really need to come to a meeting? At the same time, in this particular case, there was definitely a flaw that occurred in that there was a variance that was here. And therefore, that's a quasi-judicial proceeding. If I might suggest that the attorney look into this and come back the best way, what are the best practices for us to do this?
Sure. That is something that we're working on. We're taking a look at, what options there are, and we intend to present options to the commission to make a decision on how you want to treat this issue going forward.
Yeah, I know there was back in Commissioner Ross back in I think it was 2010-05 put together, if I'm correct on the date, a very large packet, and it didn't go anywhere. It's unfortunate because I actually thought that was a very well written ordinance that had it was indefinitely postponed, but it had a lot of procedures in it, and I can supply that to you and see if there was anything in that that's useful as well. But I do concur that, especially for quasi-judicial proceedings, we need to do that. But I do want to make a comment that is a little bit erroneous here. This commission will be on target to hold 14 commission meetings. That's 3 more than required in the 11, and a minimum of 5 workshops by the end of this month. I think this commission has demonstrated a complete commitment to ensure the village catches up with a plethora of issues that were not properly handled previously. Over the 2 years of office that I have held, we have far exceeded the number of meetings and held numerous workshops on various topics, including police, code, hurricanes, and others. During my 2 years in office, this is the only meeting that I was unable to attend. I specifically was not able to attend, and I let the manager know that. Does this warrant entire change in process? I think we do need to look at best practices, but I'd like to see it from people who have experience doing this and not us, is how I'd like to see this handled. But I do take Mr. Commissioner Samaria's point on ensuring that we don't have an issue moving forward.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just sort of, do you have any comments? No. Commissioner Smith. You can close on your item.
My biggest concern is that at the workshop that we had on the 26th, two commissioners knew they wasn't going to be there. I don't understand why it wasn't brought up at that particular meeting to find out if possibly a third person was not going to be there. And then we could have scheduled in public another commission meeting. Everybody making a big thing that I'm pushing transparency. Well, that's what I got elected on. That, yes, we can do stuff that the public doesn't always have to know, but to me, it's better that it's done publicly.
I don't disagree.
Again, you brought up that it did cost us money because we didn't have this. I think that if we should be shown, if the meeting is scheduled, we're not like North Miami or other big cities where we have to travel far. I've spoken to residents and I said, well, what happens if you would have had to come to the meeting and it was canceled? No big thing. We live right in Biscayne Park. I can understand if it was other big cities and you have to travel. To me, there's no reason why we didn't have a meeting that night and a roll call is taken, because commissioners in the charter says it's only allowed to miss a certain amount of meetings, excuse meetings, before there's consequences or whatever the consequences. Yes, it's in the charter. I got the whole charter right here. And it's just a transparency. I mean, I'm not saying that we're not doing, I just want everything transparency. Same thing with the cell phones. That's why I brought it up, is that, yes, the city manager can do that. That's in his prerogative. But I want the residents to be able to know.
Understood.
We're having a lot of we're having residents who are saying conspiracy theories on why 3 commissioners were not there. If we would have been here that night, there wouldn't have been no problem. I had food poisoning that night, so I could have just made an excuse and not come. But I didn't, because we have a responsibility when I became a commissioner to show up to meetings. So, again.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
real quick.
also have to be a charter, right?
If I may, Commissioner Tudor, please, in the audience.
This
Thank
would have
you.
to be a charter thing, too?
Just to follow up on, since it's Commissioner Samaria's item, my personal opinion on this matter would be to have the commissioners who are present and able to attend to show up. If there's no quorum, then at time we can motion to adjourn. I know our attorney is going to be looking into what would be best practice, so I'll wait to hear back from the attorney on that. But just my personal opinion on the matter, I think that would probably be the most transparent way to address this issue.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Item.
Would that be a chart that we'd have to update the charter, because if it says in our...
Why don't we wait till what the attorney has to say and have them come back and do that for us? Okay, and tell us how the best way to do that. It probably is an ordinance, I would think. Didn't answer your question. Okay, 12B is also yours?
12B, yeah. This one is proper procedure for cancellation. Before the 2014 election, our elections or the results were based upon us doing it singly. Well, in 2016, we piggyback off Dade County. In 2018, we did the same thing. Our charter, I want to update, just have a couple of words change, and of course, the attorney would clarify if it's correct or anything. So I want to read what the elections 502 commencements of terms. The term of office of any elected official may commence within 10 days from the date of the election. This date and time shall be selected by the city manager based upon the ability of the new commission. That's what it says in the charter. Here's what I recommend changes. Term of office, any elected official will commence sworn in within 10 days of the receipt of the official certification of the election results by Dade County Supervisor of Elections. The date and time shall be determined by the village manager based upon availability of the commission. The date shall be posted to all residents via website or email. Again, this will be, we'd have to probably do an ordinance or charter.
That's a referendum. It's a referendum.
Commissioner,
It's a charter.
excuse me, let me jump in here. Sworn in within 10 days of the receipt of the official certification. Do you want to make that 10 business days or 10 calendar days?
No, we don't want 10 calendar days.
10 calendar days.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, open the floor for
Then it
discussion.
would be approximately 12 days if we do that. So I want 10 days.
Right,
you wanna jump
because
in?
at the last election, what happened was we waited till the certification. That was, I believe, on the 21st. We had the Thanksgiving
I'm gonna ask
holidays.
them back if you just
and
keep it down. Thank you.
weekends in there. And so,
I wanted-
yeah, it was, I think, 8 business days.
No,
to this.
I
So
want to count.
That's why I wanted that clarification.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, Commissioner Tudor?
Yeah, in regards to, we're talking about the charter, this language in here, that caused a lot of confusion at this last election, created a lot of drama. So I think we need to see about making these changes. I personally would prefer 10 business days as opposed to 10 calendar days. But I think looking at this issue, I think we're going to have to, I think what we should be doing is looking at our charter as a whole and trying to identify issues or areas that we may need to recommend making changes to. I know there's one area that I personally would like to see a change in the charter. That has to do with the termination of charter officers. For example, the manager or the village attorney. I would personally like to see that be done instead of a 3-2 a majority. I'd like to see a supermajority, a 4-1. I think that's something that we're going to have to discuss at a later time. I was going to bring it up next commission meeting, but since we're talking about the charter here, I just wanted to kind of give everybody a heads up on that, and also in the public a heads up. And just real quick, just to follow up on that, I think that part of what we're tasked to do is, we have to look at this charter because what we're going to find is that there are going to be things that need to be changed in there that's going to benefit the residents here, and that's going to protect the residents. And so I think that we're going to have this conversation at some point, not just about this matter, but about other matters that this commission and the residents may have.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Tudor that it should be looked at as a whole. But going back even to Commissioner Samaria's suggestion, whether it's 10 days or 10 business days from receipt of the certification, the date and time shall be determined by the village manager based on the availability. I'm assuming that's to do the swearing in, but if it doesn't fall, let's say, on a regular commission meeting, then now is that a special meeting? And if the charter, and this goes with looking at the charter as a whole, because if the charter says, okay, the special meetings are called by the mayor or 4 members of the commission, but here we want the village manager to choose the date, then we're having things a little bit out of sync. So I think it just needs to be tweaked a little bit so it matches up.
I kind of want to go back a little bit, if I may, and go through the history a little bit, because there was a lot of accusations thrown around, and I think you used the word drama. I would argue that we need to go back and figure out what happened. And so when I did that, I actually looked at the ordinance, which is 2012-05, for those who want to read it. There was a couple of issues. One is when they changed and did 2012-05, which I applaud them for, because I believe that was the correct decision to move it to the general election for increased participation as well as cost savings. But there was erroneous language in the outgoing commissioners were no longer to serve as the commissioner after the November election. If you actually read lines 28 through 33, it actually says the date after the election, not even certification, the date of the election, they no longer can sit on the commission. They can't even certify the election. So during that time frame, when they, back in 2016, when we were put back in, we were sworn in 28 days later. Not 14, 28 days later. That's calendar days. So when this was first done, we were sworn in, and nobody, I saw, and forgive me, but a lot of the spouses, or 2 of the spouses of the commissioners, came up and talked about how it's the slippery slope in the charter. At the end of the day, it was an error. It was an error made by 2 commissions ago. When they put the charter together, they didn't use the language certification of election, and they also didn't take into account the 10-day. What used to happen many years ago when we had our own elections, the clerk would schedule the election, which they could do because we were doing it ourselves, so that the 10-day fell right at the December timeline. So that when they would schedule the elections, it would happen on the next time, the next December meeting, which was already set. And so nobody was in violation of the 10 days. Apparently, when I spoke to several attorneys about this, apparently when we had general elections and things were in the general elections and a lot of things were being contested, this became a problem for many municipalities because many of them had the 10-day norm, and the 10-day wasn't occurring. So what I want to get back to is, in our case, one could argue, and I'm not saying you should make the argument, one could argue it was 14 calendar days from when this occurred. 2 were holidays and Thanksgiving, and 4 of those days were weekends. If you said it was a business day, you would say we didn't break the 10-day rule. And what's the remedy anyway? Having said that, it seems to me that if we go back to the idea that we're not going to be holding special commission meetings and having attorneys come and having them to serve in an extra meeting, I don't concur with the 10-day rule. I think for a small village like ours, it should be the next scheduled meeting, or 10 days, whichever happens after the certification of the election. And the reason I'm suggesting that is this way we're not holding another special election. It's the same process we've done since the 20-some-odd years I've been here. The December's when everybody's sworn in. If not, you do have to hold a special extra meeting. I don't think there's that much going on that it can't wait till the next meeting, cost-wise and resource-wise. I just don't. And it's what we've always done. By changing it to match that, the language I would suggest is it's the first meeting in December or 10 days after certification, whichever comes first. And this would not create a lot of the drama that occurred. The rest of what is written here, I don't have a problem to. But this way, once the meetings have been set and the dates have been set, there isn't a lot of problems with that. But I did think it was kind of interesting that there were errors in that ordinance. And it's I'm not blaming anybody. The attorney should have picked up on it. The commissioner should have picked up on it. Enough could have gone on that could have been done. But when you imply that there's some deliberate act not to swear in folks, it's not only erroneous, it's misleading. Okay, so I wanted everybody to understand that this occurred because of a change in procedure. Things were dropped, weren't caught. It happened when we were put in office. As I said, it was 28 days. Nobody stood up and yelled. We didn't stand up and yell. Nobody made a big deal of it. But this time it was. So I don't want anybody to leave here thinking that there's some massive thing not to swear people in. That wasn't the intent here. Thank you. Any other comments?
To me, when there's no reason other cities do it. To explain to me, when does a commission officially, meaning, let's say, hypothetically, the commissioners that were before, when does their term end? Does their term end on the election day, or does it end on the next swearing in? Because if it ends on the election day, that means we had 3 commissioners. We only had 2 commissioners that were serving. So that means our government was not complete.
That's what I'm trying to say, is what was erroneous in that.
There's no reason why you couldn't have doesn't have to be a swearing in where everybody's here. You can go to Village Hall, the candidates can be sworn in by the village clerk, and then at the ceremony at the December meeting you have it.
They have to certify the results of the election. The commissioners that are in have to certify the results of the election. They can't be sworn in, is that correct? Yeah, so you can't, it's a nice idea, Commissioner Smery, but it can't be done legally.
I've seen other cities do it. I've seen other cities where right after the election results are in, they have a swearing in at City Hall.
But the commissioners still have to come, the former commissioners still have to come in and have to certify the results, which means it's a special meeting.
That can be done at the next commission meeting. At least the commissioners, the new commissioners are sworn in already. To me, the December meeting was, when we had our December meeting, was the last present commission shouldn't have had a meeting. That should have just been basically switching over to the new commissioners or introduce the last commission. We had new business. The commissioners there were discussing new business, and they weren't the commissioners anymore.
Okay, so we have suggestions on the floor. My thoughts are, let the attorney come back with whatever best practices are, once again, and come back and give us an idea of what most cities do, and let's see if we can't fall in that realm without costing the village extra resources.
We're happy to take a look at this issue and what other municipalities do of your size or bigger, and propose revisions accordingly.
And then if this has to change, if this has to be an ordinance, this can be done for the 2018 election. This way it doesn't cost the village any extra money, right? Yes. Okay.
Okay. And I agree with Commissioner Tudor on having to look at multiple issues that are in the charter that should be looked at the same time. So when we put the referendum, it goes through. Any other comments? Is that consensus to the commission to have the village attorney look at this?
Yes.
Yes.
And thank you for bringing it forth, sir. All right, 12C is also yours.
I've always believed that, and it says it in our charter, and somebody can correct me if it isn't, that residents have a right to propose items on the agenda. I agree that we don't want to have residents just put anything on the agenda. So I think that it should be sponsored by a commissioner, where a commissioner then sits down with the residents and discusses the items that they want to put on there. Because after all, we do work for the residents, and the residents do have a lot of good ideas. This is one of them that came from one of the residents, and I'm going to introduce the residents, is Rosemary. That's why everybody knows that I'm not making up somebody's name, that it came from a resident, and it did.
You don't have to slouch.
This idea was presented to me by Rosemary. She originally approached it to the city manager. I felt, against transparency, that I wanted it to be brought to the attention of the commissioner, so I offered to sponsor it. I sat down with her, we discussed it, and this is the ideas that we're coming up with. This is going to be a seminar. This is not going to be a workshop. This is not going to be a commissioner's meetings. The commissioners have no say on what goes on at this meeting. This is going to be a seminar that's going to be put on by the city manager to explain to the residents on what's going to happen, preparedness of what's going to happen, prepare us for the next, for the next hurricane. And on this, for the residents that don't have it, one, it should be held in May. Recommended that it should be held at the rec center. There is more room and more parking space. I don't think it should be held here. Review what programs are in place, both old and new. Presentation where the city manager gets to pick the people that he wants to participate. As I also suggested that maybe we can have somebody from FEMA that can be there. So it also be the police, the public works, and anyone else that's important that he figures would be better to inform the residents on what's going to happen, to prepare us in case there's a storm. I've spoken to residents who think this is a great idea. Again, this is not criticizing my fellow commissioners. They said as long as you don't have the commission participate in it. And I said, well, that's not the purpose of this. This is to be a presentation to aware. Review what to do, what to expect, who to contact, and where to go if help is necessary. Incorporate. Now, Commissioner Tudor has his grid that he talked about a couple meetings. We would have where they can use the grid. Each commissioner will be appointed to a grid to where they can help any of the residents. I think that can be tied in. Again, this is a presentation. The city manager gets to decide on what he wants to do it. The only thing I require is that the residents are informed and prepared for what's going on. Will the church open their facility for shelter, as they did in the past? I don't know if they did. Prepare a flyer newsletter for all residents to be distributed either by email, website, or mail. Again, I'd like to have comments from the city manager on what he thinks about this.
No, this is a no-brainer. We did this last year, and we're delighted to do it again. I mean, we certainly want to reach out to the residents and let them know that we are prepared for hurricane season coming up and what we've done to prepare, as well as provide information as to where to go and what to do should a hurricane, hit us. So, no problem there. Delighted to do it.
Any other comments from commissioners?
There was a reference to FEMA. I think that's a great idea, but I also think you need to use your local resources as well. I recommend reaching out to Miami-Dade County Fire Rescue. I'm happy to help with that. My husband's a captain. There's public information officers that serve the community for just this issue. I would be more than happy to circulate some names. I think it would be very beneficial to the residents to know what local resources they have should a hurricane hit. And if the commission's interested, I'll circulate the names after the meeting.
Do we have a consensus to have them do that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. Any attorney, Commissioner Tudor, then Vice Mayor.
Actually, this is a good idea. I mean, this is something that residents, the last time we did this, there was a lot of positive feedback from residents on that. So I think this is a service that we should be providing to residents, especially after this last hurricane season, what we went through. I do agree that this should be completely run by the manager. I don't think the residents need to be hearing any necessarily any input from the commission on this at the seminar. This will be his show, and I think this also would be a good opportunity. I know we were looking into the Everbridge with the state. If we have that up and running before this time, then that's a great opportunity to get that information out to residents about that resource as well.
May I ask you a quick question on the Everbridge? That's an automatic push without us having to register, correct or incorrect?
I think we have to go through the state contact in order to sign up for the service.
We do. The mayor's asking if to build the database of cell phones, I believe.
Yeah, they have push notifications.
That's a push notification, and what we do is we set the geographical area, and they push to that geographical area.
Perfect. Thank you.
The biggest thing about it is the geo-targeting feature of the program is what a lot of municipalities like.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
No, I mean, I concur. I think this is a very good thing that should happen. It should just happen every year. It allows, and I agree that the manager should be running it and be one-on-one with the residents, so the residents are free to voice their concerns. I know that there was a lot of conversation last year about notices or not knowing what to do when the hurricane came out or not seeing certain things. So if the residents have this meeting, it's a chance for them to give even their suggestions of where they would be looking for a notice. So I wholeheartedly agree with this moving forward.
Agree as well. Okay. Yeah, actually, I think this is a great idea as well, and I like the idea that's run by the manager and commission's not involved. I think that's actually in staff. I think that's a great thing to do. Location-wise, I'll just leave. I think that should be left up to the manager, whatever he thinks is appropriate. As far as the only concern I had, or the only suggestion I might have, is try and do multiple avenues of communication. Because at the last workshop, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think we were in the 40 range, and that's about 1% or a little more than 1% of the population. So what I'd like to see is find a way to reach out to more people. I do know that Miami-Dade County, as you said, even in the PowerPoint that you prepared, there's just a plethora of resources that emergency management has, and that's where your taxpayer dollars go. So I'd like to, and I know you're very aware of that, sitting in the back smiling, I'd like to see us utilize some of those resources to get to more people, because 1% really isn't it isn't a turnout that is going to necessarily inform as many as we'd like. And also the needs are different.
One of the things that we're doing with our communications workshop as well, as Commissioner Wise knows, is that we are trying to find the best ways how our residents want to be reached. Do they want to be reached by phone, email, cell phone, and that sort of thing. So we'll be collecting that information.
Is it possible during that meeting to allow, because a lot of times we do these on Saturdays or with people have families, is there any way to do a phone conference or call in for this particular workshop so that it does reach more of our residents?
A seminar.
Yes, it's a seminar. I mean, it's going to be a presentation, but I don't know that there's a way to call in on that one. I'd have to look into that and see.
If not, I just would like us to find ways to have more than the 1%.
We can videotape it, put it on the website, and that sort of thing, so that it's there as a reference point. So. And
then that's not what we don't communicate. You guys can. And then we can also put together stuff at Village Hall that people can maybe get, because I know Miami-Dade County prints out enormous amounts of materials. I don't know if I brought
They do. Commissioner Heyman usually provides us with those after her annual meeting to kick off hurricane season, which should be coming up next month as well.
And they may have those available at Village Hall as well, and then help distribute them as residents come in throughout the season.
And we do that, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Commissioner Smear, anything else?
No, that's enough.
Okay. Thank you.
There's nothing for them to prove, it's just to bring it to the commission.
I think there was, thank you for working on that. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, so request for placements of agenda
Yes.
on the next meeting. You can either do this now or later.
No, I can, yeah, okay. We're seeing campaign signs that are out right now, and our ordinance and Dade County ordinance is completely, yes, there's signs out there from Miami Shores. According to, well, I want to bring an agenda item in reference to discussing the political signs that we have out right now, because there's one on 6th Avenue is Dade County, and according to Dade County, you can't have political signs in our swales, and that's where they are.
That's a code issue. Can you work with the...
Well,
That is a code issue, and we've actually, I've sent the code officer out when you reported this to me, and so she was supposed to make contact with the homeowner, or actually what she did was made contact with the political candidate to let them know that sign needs to be moved onto private property if it's going to be there. So...
Thank you. Anything else?
And, yeah, I want to put on also in reference to agenda items being put on. According to our charter, agenda items should be put on 8 days before a commission meeting. And I want us to follow the charter.
Okay, discussion item.
Discussion item.
Anybody else? Okay. Village Attorney, anything to add?
We are working on your device policy and as well as the public records policy, and I'm going to add to our list the cancellation of the meetings policy as something that we're going to be looking into, as well as the termination policy that we've discussed here tonight. And you've heard from Rebecca on FEMA appeals, and I'm confident that she will continue to keep the village apprised of progress in that respect.
Thank you. If there's anything else you need for us on that, please let us know so that we're right on top of it. Thank you very much. Village Manager?
I think we've covered most everything tonight. One of the things that wasn't really mentioned was we are starting to work towards creating safer streets and slowing traffic down. David Hernandez has been great. We've put up some, and what are they called? Delineators. That was it, sorry. Delineators around curves on 10th, I believe it's on 11th Place, and then on 10th Avenue at a curve there. We're also painting the word slow in areas, and we will be working with the police chief as well to start putting in the speed cushions that we're going to do a pilot program on. So David's done a great job on that. He's working on lighting with FPL as well and talking with them. So those are some safety items that we are looking into.
I would really look forward, if possible, if there's time on the agenda, to have him present a lot of the things that he's doing, and so the community can know everything that he's doing.
Yes, absolutely.
Great, thank you. Those board committee reports? If you don't mind, I know everybody can hear you without a mic, but if you'd be so kind to go to the mic.
What the conversation that y'all were having about hurricane. When I walked into this place on December 3rd, I reached out to the director of the EOC, and I already had numerous meetings with him and his staff. And like the young lady mentioned, the coordination is extremely important between the agencies. And that coordination, I've already bridged that gap with the county. I've already bridged that gap with the other cities. So because we're going to be, something happens in this area, the neighbor, your neighbors are going to be affected just as well. So I've already started to open that bridge to make sure that we do have communications from the county and the city. Okay, so I just wanted to reiterate that I've already been working on that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner comments?
I have a quick comment. And at some point in time, I think we're going to have a discussion, because I think October of this year is the end of the Waste Pro contract. So I think we need to have a discussion sooner than later. And I would like at that time for us to have all options on the table and be able to have an educated discussion and being able to look at the cost of different choices for the village, including staying with Waste Pro, going to another vendor, even looking at what would be the total cost to bring sanitation back in-house. So what I think we need to be doing is getting ahead of it and not finding out as October's approaching that we haven't addressed this issue or even discussed it. So I think we have good staff in place, and I think that this is a discussion and information that we can get from the staff that can really help residents.
Okay. Do you want to just go ahead and put that on as a staff item for June or so? Give them some time?
We can put that on for May for initial discussions. I think that would be good. We're going to have to do an RFP. There's going to be quite a process and a transition process, so we're going to need to move quickly on this. So May would be
better.
The best start for this.
Okay, thank you. May I ask, if I may ask a question, because you and I have had discussions on this. Since coming on board, you've made significant changes with Waste Pro. I'd just like you to briefly, because we have a short agenda this evening, so briefly talk to the public about that so they're aware of everything you've done.
I think that I did wait the first 3 weeks because it was Christmas. So subsequently, I met the manager, and I went straight to the manager, and I realized that one of the things that I felt that was lacking was a little bit more aggressiveness, and understood that there's somebody here that's going to be watching them. Okay. One of the reasons, so subsequently, we had a meeting with them, with their top cats, I'm going to call it, and they've changed some of the things I've made them change. One of the things that they're changing now, they're more transparent. Every day, maybe 3 to 4 times a day, they send emails exactly where the trucks are, at what location, where have they gone by, what have they done. Also, there's constant communication from my staff, Caesar, and myself about what they've missed, any trucks that break down, when the trucks are going to be replaced, when are they coming in, what have they missed, what have they haven't, what are they going to get to, and if they're going to be late, say 3 o'clock, I'm making them tell me, hey, if your truck breaks down at 3 o'clock, you got to let me know. So since that, I've also addressed some things that they've been doing that I wasn't happy with. Some of these guys, they grab the actual. They're not being
gentle.
Gentle, that's a good word. And every time I see something like that, I reach out to the boss. Any complaints that I see, I stop them. I tell them, hey, you guys can't do that. I work directly with their supervisor. Caesar's constant communications. I think that it's much better. In my opinion, from when I started the first month, I saw a lot of complaints. I received a lot of complaints that first month. And I'll be honest with you, I did not move on any of those complaints so I could get a good feeling of what they were doing. And right now, I would say that it's not all perfect. I have an incident that sometimes they run over, sometimes the swales. I've already addressed sometimes when they their trucks run over through the swales. I've already addressed that with their boss. But I think that they're doing things now that they weren't doing before, and I think that's a start.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to further conversation. Thank you, sir. Unless anybody has questions. Okay. I just wanted to, if I may, address one comment that was made during public comments regarding the feral cats. I've been on your street. I'm very aware of what it was, and that you're all there now, and I truly empathize because you do have a severe issue on that street. I would like to see what staff could do to do TNR, also see who owns the cats, and figure out what we can do to help them. I feel their pain. I've walked down their streets when I was campaigning, and it really does have a significant issue there. We also have, as you know, there's still about 4 people in the park that are continually not only feeding cats, but breeding cats. Mm-hmm. So I would like to see what we can do to get the TNR back on and see what we can do, at least get to a point where that can occur. There is issues, and I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards regarding licensings of cats. We don't have it like dogs, and there's just, unfortunately, the county, unfortunately, we just don't have the ability in sometimes to pick up cats and then take them away. We have to pick them up and leave them. And so I'll talk to you about that afterwards. But it is definitely a problem, and I do sincerely empathize. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
On a separate note, Christian, I'd like for you to look into this, because as a veteran, this bothers me big time. We have one of our residents, and I'm big on what you do on your property is your business. But one of the problems I have is we have a resident that has an American flag that he does on his property to cover up his things, that code and everything. And as a veteran, I'm very offended by it because it's torn up pretty big. I mean, there's so many rules, and I know I spoke to you about this. There's no code, but there's got to be some way. Maybe some veterans come and talk to him, and he happens to be a veteran himself, which is embarrassing. But he has this 3 gigantic flags that are on his property that are blocking, and it's torn. It's not respectful, and I know that that's his property and he can do what he wants, but I think that, I don't know, the city could somehow find out something that we can do. Laughing about it as a veteran, that's very offensive. Not you laughing.
No,
laughing about what he's doing is very offensive. Because the
And we
fans
understand. I mean, we have discussed this with him on multiple occasions, and some residents like to play what we call whack-a-mole. You know, you cite them for this, and they try to get around it. And that's exactly what this particular resident is doing. And so, and we're aware of it. And
I mean,
we'll discuss the condition of his flags. Absolutely.
Because he's supposed to take them down and burn them. I mean, if we have to, we'll come up with a fight to get a code to where you're not allowed to do that with American flag.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just disrespectful.
If I may, I think it would be more appropriate to notice it so the homeowner knows that his code compliance should be.
I'm sorry, would you be so kind as to?
And my dad's in Arlington, so I understand what you're saying 110%, but I think this would be more appropriate if it was noticed, so the homeowner had an opportunity to be heard. This is kind of evolving into a code compliance discussion, and the homeowner doesn't have notice yet. So do we have time to get it on the May agenda, just so the...
We'll just have the code officer. This is an ongoing thing with this particular resident, so I don't know that we necessarily need a new code to deal with it.
Okay, I just wanted to tread lightly here with discussing an issue about a homeowner when they didn't have notice that, the village was going to be addressing it.
But this is a legal issue at this point.
I know, I understand, but just
noticed.
to answer her question, he's been noticed many times and he's been told.
No, just to clarify, I mean, on the agenda for today's meeting, it's not an item.
No, I
That's what I mean. That's all I mean.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's duly noted. Thank you. If we may take this offline, and I appreciate what you're saying, but we'll take it offline. Thank you. Announcements?
On Monday, April 8, 2019, the Code Compliance Board was rescheduled for April 18, 2019, 7 p.m. On the same day, or Thursday, April 18, 2019, 7 p.m., we have Parks and Parkway Advisory Board. On April 8, 2019, 7 p.m., we have Biscayne Park Foundation. Wednesday, April 10, 2019, 6 p.m., we have Public Art Advisory Board. Monday, April 15, 2019, 7 p.m., we have Planning and Zoning Advisory Board. And Wednesday, April 24, 2019, 7 p.m., we have Public Safety Advisory Board. Our next regular commission meeting will be held on Tuesday, May 7, 2019, at 7 p.m. And the workshop communication has been rescheduled to Tuesday, April 16, 2019, at 7 p.m. And the 2019 annual spring egg hunt will be on Saturday, April 20, 2019, 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at Edinburgh Recreation Center.
Thank you. I want to encourage everybody to come out for the Easter egg hunt on the 20th. There'll be plenty of bunnies hopping. Also, we'd like to also encourage everybody to come to April 16th meeting for the workshop for the branding. I hope everybody will be able to show up. Commissioner Samaria?
I just wanted to let We had a movie event, and I always like the transparency, so I like to let know. I'm going to be presenting 2 checks from my company to the foundation that's going to be used for the rec center. One was on movie night. We raised over $170. And at the last event, at the St. Patty's Day, we raised $100. So I'm going to be presenting 2 checks to the foundation at that foundation meeting. I just wanted to...
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.